Greetings, fine people. My name is Leonard, and I am a junk crafter.
In this episode, I will be melting soda cans to make an aluminum casting. I have done aluminum and brass casting in the past, but never with cans, as I was told by professionals that soda cans make for terrible casting. The way I see it, it's better to try something yourself and fail than just take their word for it. Unless the advice involves playing in traffic or running with scissors. Some advice can be taken at face value. Metal casting. What is it? How is it done? When was the process discovered? Where was it first practiced? Why am I asking these questions? Casting is the process of melting down metals and pouring the resulting liquid into molds to create tools or artwork. The first evidence for casting dates to around 3000 BC in Mesopotamia, which lies in the modern nations of Syria and Iraq. There are suggestions that it may have originated earlier in China or India, but I'm not going to get into that. Pick your favorite ancient civilization and run with it. For my casting projects, I prefer to use the lost foam method, which involves insulating foam carved into the shape of the desired product and then surrounded by sand. Be sure to add a sprue to your work if the shape needs a path for the metal to reach the piece. This method is an evaporative process. As the molten metal contacts the foam, the material evaporates and the metal replaces it inside the cavity. When done properly, the sand holds the shape of the foam and the metal solidifies into a perfect copy. When I do it, it usually fails in some kind of spectacular way. But 10th time's the charm, I guess. To melt the aluminum, I'm going to use my coal forge and bituminous coal. I have a propane forge that my wife bought me as a surprise Christmas present a few years ago, and I love her very much for it. But I've never used it for casting, and I didn't want to take any chances this time. Coal fires can be tricky. Coal doesn't really want to burn to start with, due to the moisture content and density. Firewood and charcoal are somewhere around 10% moisture content, and they're made up of a bunch of fibrous bits that come apart with relative ease. Bituminous coal, on the other hand, may have up to 30% moisture content, and it's a freaking rock. Most smiths I know start a fire by creating a little teepee of sticks with kindling underneath. Once it gets going, they add the coke from the previous fire onto the burning wood. I was taught a neat trick by a smith when I first got started that involved only a few sheets of newspaper. You roll up a sheet of newspaper, make a little donut, then make a smaller one, put some loose newspaper in the middle. Light the whole thing on fire, and when it gets burning, smother it in coke and blast it with air. The heat from the burning paper has nowhere to go but into the coke, and most of the time will start the coke burning. I quickly discovered that it was far faster just to crumple and smash the paper rather than making neat donuts and get the same result. I think that the easily burned material with lots of air pockets inside is what makes it work, rather than the chimney-shaped column of burning paper. Either way, it works fine for me, and I don't have to deal with kindling or teepees. While the fire gets going, I'll put the mold together. I've made sure that the high-tech sand-holding device, soup can, is stable and level. I've also placed it on 2 fire bricks. That way, if anything spills, it will land on a safe surface. Nothing around the pour is flammable either. Sand goes in the container to make a base for the piece. Then the piece goes in, followed by more sand around the sides. Make sure that the top of the sprue is clear of sand. You don't want to block the flow of metal. It's also good to give it a few taps to make sure that everything is settled. If you choose to try this yourself, this part is critical. The sand has to be bone dry. It can't have any moisture in it. When molten metal contacts water, the water instantly flashes to steam. Steam occupies 1,600 times more volume than liquid water, so a tiny bit of water can create an explosion of molten metal that will ruin your day and every day after that. Casting needs to be done with proper equipment and procedures. I've done it many times with professionals and have the knowledge to do it myself. If you want to give it a shot, I suggest checking with a local college. Many of them have a program related to metalworking and do different forms of casting for demonstrations. Be safe. It's boring, but better than being permanently disfigured or dead. One other thing. If you bake the sand to get all the moisture out of it, make sure it's cold before you put the foam in there. The first time I did this, the sand was fairly warm, and the foam shrank and deformed. It's quite disappointing after spending an hour or two carefully shaping your project. Good. So now on to the cans. The best way to work with these would be if they were shredded into small bits. But since I didn't think of that until after I started, they're going to be crushed instead. I'm trying to find the most efficient method of quickly getting this done. Nope. No. Nope. No. New. Nope. No. No. This works pretty well, though the cans get stuck to the pole a lot. Fun, but I don't feel like picking up a heavy thing and dropping it over and over. It finally occurred to me that there was a really simple, fast, and easy way to flatten them. As is usually the case, the last technique you try ends up being the one that works. Before I start loading the crucible, I like to warm it up. And by warm, I mean heat it to about 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. Time to melt some cans. The great thing about aluminum is that it has a relatively low melting point of 1220 degrees Fahrenheit. Cans are very thin, so they heat quickly, and adding the next can doesn't take very long. It's not as fast as if the cans were, say, in little shreds, but I digress. As I was working, I found that preheating the cans sped up the process massively. It also meant that I didn't have to go back and forth between the bucket and fire to load the crucible. After the crucible started to get full, I poked around inside the bowl and was dismayed by how unmelty it felt. Either something was sapping the heat, or something was on top of the molten metal. Now, I expected some slag to form. Slag is the crud that isn't part of the metal you're melting. You skim it off the surface of the liquid metal as you go. When I was melting pure metals in the past, there was very little slag. This time was a different story. The crucible is probably 50% slag at this point. It was a little dismaying as I feared this might be the reason I was told not to do this in the first place. Could it be possible that the slag wouldn't separate from the metal in such a small container? Nope, there was just a lot of slag. Here's what we've all been waiting for. The pour. You want to pour it quickly, but not so fast that it overflows the container. Nor do you want to pour so slowly that the sand collapses in on the piece. The burst of flame was the evaporated foam igniting. You can tell from the amount of black smoke. Fortunately, I'm wearing so much safety gear I can't smell it. It's unpleasant. Unless you like that sort of thing, I'm not judging. While it's still liquid, I like to poke it a little. Not that I think it will accomplish anything. If there are any voids in there, nothing I do will change that now. We'll let it rest for a few minutes. I'll pace nervously off camera for a bit. Let's see what we have labored to produce. And it's a soda can. There is a line around the base where it failed to fill. I suspect that it was due to the shape of the sprue and the large area just under it. The evaporated foam probably filled the space and prevented the aluminum from filling in. Because of the size, it might have been better to set it on its side and add some channels to release the gases. Ah well, live and learn, as they say. I cleaned it up a little on my belt sander. When they come out, cast pieces almost always have this rough texture, so you always need to do some finishing work. In this case, I'll also use a cutting tool to define the lower letters as they were lost in the ugly bits. Mr. Fine is displaying the final product. It's not perfect, but then neither is anything I make. So, works for me. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked it, please click the like button, leave a comment, and consider subscribing. If you didn't like it, please click the like button, leave a comment, and consider subscribing. Let me know what kind of projects you think I should work on. Until next time, stay crafty.